Your goal is not in her.
Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Geek-A-Tech. So today we are going to talk about REST API's error code. Uh, Today we are going to talk about API error codes because you know what happened when we do the API testing, then we encountered with many of the response code which we receive when we push the request to the server, and we receive certain kinds of HTTP responses. So today we are going to talk about the error codes which we might receive when we're testing it, and these error codes are very important to understand because when you test the APIs and you receive those error methods, then they have a very significant impact on your API, how they behave, how should not they behave. So to understand the API's behaviors, we need to understand these error codes. They are around more than 30 or 40 error codes or HTTP codes specifically, if I say, available. But we are going to talk about only 8 API codes, HTTP codes, which you encountered frequently in your testing while you are testing the APIs. So it is important to understand that what error code or what kind of if I say precisely, HTTP response code you receive when you test the APIs, in under what circumstances you will receive those codes. So let's start with the first one is 204, no content. So what happen, suppose when you have an API which fetch the data from database, like you want to fetch the record of a customer based on the customer ID, and suppose you enter a customer ID which is not available in your database, you have no records. So the implementation done in such a manner that you receive the response as a blank response along with the HTTP code as 204. Again, you can contest this code, this HTTP code, with 200, because in my previous projects, there was one of the project we used 204 whenever we did not find any record in the database. And in my later on in my another project, we implemented in such a way that we receive HTTP response code as 200, okay, but with the blank response. So when we have a discussion on that, then my architect, the solution architect, told me that request is okay, there is no problem with the request. So so that's why we are returning response as 200 instead of 204. But I says that as we are receiving no content in the response, then we should giving a response code as a 204. So I had a discussion with two different solution architects, and they both have their separate ideas to deal with the certain scenarios. So it's not a hardcore rule that if you're not receiving response in your API, then you should have 204 or 200, okay, in place. It all depends on your implementation, that how you implement your APIs, how you're dealing with your APIs. So yes, many of the projects they use 204, many of them uses 200 as a okay request with a blank response, with the but where you have blank object you receive, where you not receive anything in your response. Some of the projects or the some of the APIs, they are responding as 204, no content, with blank objects or with blank responses. So again, so now let's start with the another response code, error response code, which you receive frequently is bad request. So what happened when you receive the bad request? So on the API level, when you implement different kind of validations to deal with the security of the APIs, to not allow that someone passes the special characters or invalid characters in your API and try to fetch the data. because I have a encounter because I encountered a situation where, in my on my API, it was giving me a specific set of data in response, but instead of passing the customer ID, what I passed a special character and gave me the all the data they have in the database. So that was a bug which was later on fixed by the developer. So to deal with, with certain situations, they put the validation in place, if you are passing a value or a payload which contains values like a name. So a name cannot have a first name specifically. If I say cannot have special care, they cannot have a numerical value, they can only be a set of characters or alphabets. So you should not allow those values to fetch the data from the database. And there are certain kinds when you are entering the uh, roll numbers, if you are passing, or I can say bank account number. So those are numerical values, they should not contain any alpha numeric character or alpha character, or any specific or special characters like question mark, asterisk sign, dollar sign in the request. So if you are passing them, then because of the part of the validation, those are working fine, you will receive a response as a bad request. It means the request which you are shooting to the server or you're shooting through your API is not correct, it's not passing the validation, it is trying to violate the validations which are in place. So you will receive 400 bad requests. So suppose if you have anything in place, or your API is supposed to cater the validations, then you should receive response as 400, okay, as a bad request if you're providing the invalid input values, or invalid, if I say precisely, invalid format values, okay. And there is the third error code which I want to say is 401 unauthorized. So this is received when you are dealing with the scenarios where you are passing the token authentication token values, and if you are passing an unauthorized values in your API request, like if you're passing certain login details, you have tokens in your request which providing you authorization, and if you are not providing the correct value, then in certain cases you will receive 401 unauthorized. It means you are trying to access certain values through your APIs for which you are not authorized, or the credentials or token which you are passing is not uh, up up to the authorization. They are failing the authorization, so you will receive 401. So again, it's a very important error code you receive in REST API. So these all error codes we are discussing right now is for REST API. Again, for the XML, or more precisely if I say, uh, for the other kind of APIs, um these error codes will not be the same, okay. They have a different kind of error messages they have when you deal with them. So right now, as we are talking about the REST APIs, so these error codes are related to the REST. Okay, now let's talk about 404. So it's a very interesting error code. So suppose what happens sometimes, it again depends, this error code depends on two conditions and the implementation, along with the uh, response you expected. Like suppose if I am having an API which is getting the response from the database based on the input which I provided, but the implementation is done in such a way that the input parameter which I'm passing is working as a path parameter, okay. So what will happen that in such case, if I pass an invalid value, or a value which is not existing in my records, then I will receive 404, because what happened, it will treat that URL as a path instead of treating as a bad request or as an input parameter, because you are passing that value as an input parameter as a path. So instead of getting 400 in such scenarios, you will get 404 not found, because it is trying to access that particular path which does not exist. Okay, so that's the basic difference which you need to understand. You might say that, okay, what is happening, like if I am having let me show you an example. Like if I am trying to access API dot wave dot v1 slash code slash 1. So here what you are trying to do, you are trying to provide your input value as a path parameter. So what if, suppose if you are passing 0 and this value is not available in DB, and this implementation done in a manner which says the path parameter, so it will give you not found instead of 204 no content or 200. Okay, or in case if you try to passes like that, like a percentage sign. So what this sign means, this sign means in URL means space, because whenever you see in your uh, like in your 20 and percentile, it means space. Whenever you see the path of a URL, and that space is treated as a encoding value. So if you are trying to pass this, then it will say that it's a not found. It will not say you uh, bad request. Okay, in such a case you will found the response as 404 not found. So it's a correct method, it's a correct response. So don't think that it's not a valid response, I should get bad request. But because it is happening only because you are passing a value in path parameter instead of a query parameter. So that's why you are receiving 404 not found. It is trying to find that path. Okay, instead of validating that value, it is trying to find that path which is not available. Okay, and there is another error code you might receive which is called 413 payload too large. So what happens sometimes when you provide the payload, or we can say the body section of the request, it it contains a certain amount of data. Okay, you cannot pass more than that. Then you will receive 413, the payload is too large, the request is too big. So to cater those things, developers they change their codes, they try to break up the requests in forms, they try to zipping their request. uh, but if they are not doing, and if it's a simple request, then you might receive the payload too large. Again, it's all totally depend on the your implementation, that how big requests you are going to cater. Okay, sometimes you don't require a big payload to uh, post or create any record in your database. Okay, or to update any record in your database, then you might not get this error so frequently. But in case you have a big amount of um data which you are trying to push, then you might receive this one. Again, 401 unsupported media type. So this is an interesting error code. What happens, suppose if you are trying to perform an operation which is not available, like you want to try to get the data from database. Okay, so and your complete implementation is done on the get method. Okay, and instead of using get method, you are using post or put. Okay, so what will happen, you will get this error, that unsupported media type. So if you are trying to use a method type which is not implemented for that API, then you will receive this error. Okay, simple as this. If your API is post API and you are trying to use it as a gate, then you will receive this error. Then there is another one, request timeout. So what happens, you saw many times that when you hit the API, and after a few seconds, or after a certain period amount of time, you receive this error. So it is happening mostly because of the network issues. Sometimes you are not able to connect with your server, sometimes your machine doesn't have the internet, or you are not able to connect to the outside world, or your API is not able to connect with the server which it should be. So you will receive a request timeout, because it means that for a particular amount of time it tried to connect, but once it failed, then you will receive the request timeout error. Last but not the least, the fire internal server error. So this is a very interesting. Whenever you see this error, it means system is not working as it should be. It should not. System is not dealing with the validations. It's failing the system. It's crashing the system. So you can raise a bug directly for this kind of error. Once I I had a discussion with my solution architect, and he suggested me that whenever you receive 500, it means you won. You got the defect. You got the bug, because whenever you are implementing anything on your any kind of application, you don't want to show user this kind of error. Okay, you want to deal with such a informative error which says that what is the problem, like 400 bad request, which says that okay, we are passing a bad request, we are not providing the proper input values. No content means we are not getting the value from the database for the input which we provided. It means there is no record available. So if you are getting 500 internal server error, it means there is a problem in the system. It's not properly handled. Okay, so you need to raise a defect for this. The developer has to fix this. So this is all about the 8 different kind of error codes which you need to cater when you testing the APIs. Okay, you need to create your test cases around those codes. And again, most of them are very orthodox or traditional error codes you will receive, but few of them might differ based on your implementation. So try to discuss with your developers and try to understand, or make them understand that okay, this is the error code we should receive when such things happens. Or we if we are not providing in proper input values and validation fails, then we should receive bad request. If if my request is not able to connect with the server, or I am not able to through with the request because of certain reasons, then I might get 408. So you then when you discuss with the developers and you have a better understanding of these error codes, then you can create good test scenarios. And if when you understand these error codes, when you know how to deal with these error codes, then you can write a better automation script also. Okay, because for in your automation script you can verify this definition of the HTTP code, and you can verify the HTTP codes also, along with the uh, customize error messages many times, along with your these bad requests and all those stuffs. uh, the implementation done in such a manner that you will receive the customized error messages also, which is a good thing, and which should be implemented. Not only you have only bad request or unauthorized, or internal server error or no content. You should also have the uh, customized error messages, that what the problem. It should be informative, it should be generic, it should not be to the specific to the point, but it should give you more information about why this error is happening, so it is easy to debug, easy to understand. Okay, so that is all about for today's video. If you are new to my channel, please like, share and subscribe my channel, and share with your friends, and please post in comment section what new topic you want to discuss, learn, so we can do that. So thank you for the day. Thanks a lot.